think it's that the day that you manage to instill in your students and the people that you speak to the lack of certainty that so many of them come in with, I think you're doing something right. What I mean by that is that there are no ready answers. As a teacher, you know that there are no ready answers. There aren't questions that can be answered in a closed system. It isn't a yes no, it isn't a binary. It's about something much bigger and more complicated than that.
In our present system, we are forced to distance ourselves from our senses and to give higher importance to our mind and its relation to technology. So, I think education and learning are much misunderstood concepts today. Institutionalized education is equated with learning, and we are made to believe that only those who undergo these educational practices are learned and socially accepted. There must be a serious problem in our education system that shapes our mind and thought patterns and belief systems, perhaps on account of the absence of soul in the learning process. Because despite all these educational advancements, we are faced with much complex, irreversible, and irreparable problems globally. So I think learning in its true sense demands of us to slow down our pace, to wonder, to be, and to stand under the spell of the other, to understand.
Learning is something that we all do all the time, right from our birth till our death. We learn consciously, we learn unconsciously, we learn to practice a profession, we learn to speak a language, we learn to live in a community. Now, when I say knowledge and skill set, I could be referring to areas like maths, science, operating a machine, playing a sport, singing, cycling, any of that. We also know that the way in which we acquire knowledge in any of these areas is quite different from one another. Also, the expectation from a learner in each of these areas is also quite different. So, for example, a mathematician will be expected to solve a problem using his knowledge, but a historian might only be expected to describe or explain an event, a historical event. A machine operator might be expected to operate the machine in a real life setting and also maybe describe how it functions. It's only then that we will say that he has learned to operate the machine.
There's a time for play and a time for learning, and sometimes a time for both. Toys and games, all based on simple science, aimed at stimulating the young scientist in all of us, and made from everyday household objects that we'd otherwise throw away.
To make a toy train with this. Now this is like the two parallel lines, like the railway track, and this is the engine, right? And it starts from Shivaji Nagar station, right? And it comes to the Pune junction, which is the terminus. It doesn't go back to Shivaji Nagar. For children, the whole world is a laboratory. They're doing science all the time without being told that. Children learn a great deal without being taught. Now, this is adult arrogance that we teach. Children were born learners. They were born to learn. So they're learning all the time.
Basic scientific principles from the simplest of everyday objects. But from the small things, big things can grow.
There are three perspectives that I'm going to talk about learning. But first, let me answer the question on what is learning. Learning is the process of acquiring a knowledge, acquiring any kind of knowledge or skill. The second is it is to become informed or become acquainted with a particular thing. So, I've learned that, let's say, I've learned that elections are difficult to predict. Now, this is a learning that I've got through years of experience. Or it is to memorize. I've learned the tables, or it is to master, gain the experience. So, I've learned to cook a beautiful dish. So, these are various kinds of learning that we do. There are actually Jacques Delors, a very famous educationist, who formed the Delors Commission and put up a wonderful report called Learning to Be. Talked about 4 types of learning. The first is learning to know. So we learn so that we can understand processes and are able to therefore understand how the world around us functions. The second is actually learning to do, because as human beings, it's not enough that we're just learning about things happening around us. We also are people who would like to act on what we've learned. Therefore, the second type of learning is learning to do. So we must also learn what we are going to do with our skills, with our knowledge, with our experience, with our understanding, and how we are going to impact the rest of the world. Third thing he talks about is learning to live together. In our complex, evolving world where we are constantly divided by the world around us, we need to actually come up with ways of being able to live together. It's not enough that we only learn how to economically be successful in this world by learning to do and learning to know. And the fourth is a sense of calm, sense of purpose must come to us, and that is what he talks about is learning to be. We must learn to be ourselves, to be with ourselves, to be whatever we want to do. So the fourth area talks about is learning to be. But the fifth type that he talks about is actually very critical in the world today. It is learning throughout life. Today, the world is a complex place, and we need to learn that we must learn how to learn throughout our life and actually continue this process as we go along. Thank you.